Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Smart Indian Agriculture on the Federal.com. I am Vivian Fernandez. India is the largest producer of milk in the world. In the last 3 years, annual production has averaged 199 million tons. This is 50% more than the annual production 10 years ago. In terms of value, the dairy industry is larger than the value produced by rice, wheat, and sugarcane combined. It is also more profitable than crop agriculture. Gross value added in the livestock group, including dairying between 2004-2005 and 2020-2021, has averaged 6.72% a year against 2.40% for crops. The milk output growth has averaged 5% annually against 2.65% for all crops. But India is not a globally competitive producer of milk. To discuss why and how we can improve our competitive edge, we have with us two guests. Dr. Narayan Hedge is a veteran of the dairy industry. He was president and managing trustee of BAIF Development Research Centre till 2009 and is trustee till 2019. Bharatiya Agro Industries Foundation, as it was formerly called, was set up by Dr. Manibai Desai, a disciple of Mahatma Gandhi. It has done pioneering work since the 1970s in crossbreeding high-yielding indigenous cattle like Gir, Red Sindhi, Sahiwal, and Tarparkar with exotic breeds. It has also pioneered artificial insemination in the country. He joins us from Pune. Also joining us is Mr. Ranjith Mukundan, who is CEO and co-founder of Stellapps Technologies, a company that is trying to transform the milk value chain with digital technologies. It's also an aggregator of milk. Mr. Ranjith Mukundan and Dr. Narayan Hedge, thank you very much for making the time and welcome to this program.
Thank you again.
Take a deep dive into the topic we are discussing today. And let me ask you, why is the Indian dairy industry not very competitive? For example, in terms of annual milk yield per animal, I was looking at the statistics maintained by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. And I find that our average yield per cow, for example, is 17,000 kg per year. And in the case of buffaloes, it is 20,000 kgs. Whereas a cow in Israel yields 1,27,000 kgs. In the US, it's 1,08,000 kgs. And in New Zealand, which is a tiny country, is 45,000 kg per animal per year. Why is our milk yield relatively so low?
Yeah, there are two reasons, Vijay. One is the genetic material we have. Second is the focus. Basically, if you see the entire effort of the government of India, dairy industry has been not for producing more milk. Well, milk is necessary, but the primary objective is to also engage small farmers in milk production. So you have to remember that milk production, although we need to produce more milk, it was not by engaging multinationals to, tie 10,000 cows and buffaloes and produce milk. We wanted small farmers to engage. So when you say small farmers, they have a lot of problems of value chain development. There's one issue. Secondly, our Indian breed, although we are very proud of it, we have 37, 80% of the livestock were non-descript. They were not belong to any breed. So we had no policy to transform these cows into good cows. The only way we could go is to improve the genetic base of these animals through produce better quality progeny. So this is how BAIF started. However, today,
BAIF has started with artificial insemination and taking those frozen canisters to the rural areas, and that was really pioneering work. Now, you mentioned that our breeds are a problem, but over a period of time, we have been, have introduced exotic breeds, and we have also crossbred them with crossbred indigenous cows with the exotic ones. And I found that as per the 2019 census, the 32% of the female cattle population is exotic and crossbred, and the number has increased by 39% compared to the previous census in 2012. Over a 7-year period, there has been quite a big jump. But the share of indigenous cattle and indigenous nondescript cattle, while it is slowing down, because of the sheer numbers are very large, there are 98 million compared to the exotic breeds whose number is increasing, but they are relatively less. So isn't the dairy industry going in the right direction?
I have some reservations because we are, I think, working against the tide. Our wish list is to make desi breeds because there are a lot of rumors and baseless statements that desi cows are better, they are more tasty milk, the cow's milk is better than buffalo milk, all these things. I have nothing to say against it. The question is, we need to look to the ground and see what our farmer has. Our strategy should be to make them better productive than to say, if you say the desi cows, out of the 37 breeds of desi cows, only 4 breeds are milk breeds. Okay, so they are in only a few million, maybe 2-3 million cows of these breeds. Now, if everybody wants to have the cow, you don't have that number. Only way is to produce a better quality animal, and it's impossible to produce everything overnight. That's why BAIF started a strategy to say that you start with the local, whatever is available, produce better progeny and keep on building.
But let me at this point bring in Ranjith Mukundan, who has been working with a lot of farmers, and his is a relatively new company, and he's got a lot of the enthusiasm and energy of a startup which wants to be a unicorn. So Ranjith, could you tell us, number one, what are the kinds of farmers you are dealing with? Do they have large cow populations, or are these farmers with a few number of cattle, maybe 3 or 4 or 5? And secondly, compared to the national average, is the milk yield of your farmers relatively high?
Areas that we focus on, we work in, obviously the average yield is high. Not because of any other reason other than the fact that we get into that area by picking areas where the animal husbandry practices are better, purely because we are commercially driven organization. There is an investor pressure to grow quickly, show better results. So typically the unit economics is better if the village level throughputs are better. But that said, it's not way out of whack. It's not like the Israeli numbers you quoted. It's not like the US numbers you quoted, but it's a little better than 1 to 2 liters per day, right? I mean, it's a little better than typically in some parts of India, people say, how many cows do you need per liter? Right here, it is more like you can say number of liters per cow. That's a metric that we use. So to that extent, these farmers have better yield and better throughput. But that said, these are still smallholder farmers. These are not like, we'd love to take these farmers to a 10, 15, 20 level farms. That's our endeavor as we speak. We have an extension team. We partner with multiple folks. We also take semen from BAIF in our areas to ensure that the genetic material, genetic potential is better for the progeny and all of that. But to begin with, these are smallholder farmers, and we'd love for these farmers to move from a smallholder orbit to a micro-entrepreneur orbit, and hope we can succeed in that direction.
So what kind of handholding do you do? Do you provide a range of services to them?
Yeah, so we typically provide 4 services in each village that we operate in. Number one, we provide market linkage services where we buy milk from them and try to sell it as a demand backward mass premium milk, not the traditional Amul type commodity milk. That's number one. Number two, we provide agro inputs to these farmers directly. Agro inputs include dairy inputs as well, cattle feed, nutrition, supplements, silage. Plus, typically, as in India, the farmers also have other crops that they grow. Dairy is not the only thing that they do. So we give them agro inputs, including fertilizer, seed, and all of that. Third, we provide financial services. We have a wholly owned subsidiary where we give working capital and asset financing to these farmers. So these farmers can increase the herd size and buy more cattle. And finally, we provide a lot of technology inputs. For example, we have a tech that's like a Fitbit for the cattle that goes around the animal's leg. Can we use that to monitor the animals more, in real time? So these are the services that we provide in each of the villages where we set foot in.
Dr. Hegde, you spoke about our focus on improving the quality of the milk yield of indigenous cows, and the government has what is known as the Rashtriya Gokul Mission. It was set up in 2014. And it says that one of the reasons why it's focusing on indigenous breeds, even though their yield is less, for example, in the case of exotic breeds, the yield per day of milk is about 7 liters, whereas in the case of indigenous non-descript cattle, it's about 2.71 liters, according to the latest according to the Animal Husbandry Department, and it is slightly higher for high-yielding indigenous cattle. But the government says that these are indigenous cattle, they have a certain affinity for these cattle, and they want to improve their quality. Also, because a large number of small farmers, they say, cannot afford exotic breeds. Do you buy that argument?
I personally don't buy this argument because they indicate data speaks about it. Government. I unfortunately feel that these statements are made without valid, demonstrations. These are all bookish knowledge. To me, as an individual, the Rashtriya Gokul mission is completely wrong focused. If they had given right focus, farmers would have been benefited. I have been asking the forum public that should we not tell the fact to the farmer as to what is good for them? Now, we have seen in the farmer's field that, farmer understands what is his capacity, whether he is capable of maintaining better quality animal, whether buffalo or desi, his farmer is capable. They are able to judge. And we have seen over the last 45 years that, if the farmers are able to take care of preventive vaccination, hygiene, sanitation, and proper feeding, the cost of, healthcare is very marginal. Compared to that, the income from the yield is much high. My calculation is that between a desi cow and a crossbred cow, there is a loss of minimum 1,000 liters in production per year. Now that means about 30,000 rupees.
Mukundan, where do you stand on this debate between crossbred and indigenous?
No, I was just saying that I completely agree with Dr. Hegde there. So I think the indigenous animals are not very commercially viable. Look at the intercalving period, look at the productivity yield, the potential genetic potential. I'm not sort of arguing in favor of the champion cows that can give 30 liters per day, but I'm arguing in favor of at least the basic crossbred cows that can have, for example, a 0.65 bloodline animals, right? That can give reasonable productivity, may not be 30 liters, but 10 to 15 liters. Can survive in the heat of a Nagpur, for example, right? And can have reasonable fat and SNF so that the farmers can get reasonable revenue. This whole fad about desi, I think, is completely misplaced. It's nondescript, it's ND, do remember, it's not desi, right? How do you know it is 100% desi, right? If you go back in the genetic map, you'll find that somewhere there has been other genetic material that is put. So my sense is, take a commercial view, take a view what gives better throughput for the farmer, take a view from an unit economics perspective. Don't take a view based on genetics, take a view based on commercials.
Dr. Hegde, one of the reasons why the milk exporting countries have such high productivity is because they put the animals to sleep the moment their productivity flags. Now, culling is a big problem in this country because of religious sensitivities. How do we deal with this issue? Since you cannot cull the animals, particularly in cattle, I'm not talking about buffaloes, is there a way around it?
Vivian, the answer farmer finding is to shift to buffaloes, whether we like it or not. It is not only the male, because, male, of course, now the semen technology, people are able to get 91% female. The problem is when the cow gets old, when he doesn't want to maintain, little and produce some defective cow, where will he dispose of? Today, the whole market is closed. As a result, I heard from Uttar Pradesh and many places, farmers would prefer to shift to buffalo. That's one thing. So we have to really recognize whether we want to really run the business or we want to run the sentiments.
You also said that farmers are switching over to buffaloes, and that is also true because we find that of the total cattle population, as per the 2019 census, was 192 million, whereas the buffalo population has gone up to 109 million, of which only about 9 million are males. The rest are all females. Now,
no, buffalo.
I mean, the point is that there is a reason why you have buffaloes. One, you said because of culling. But do you think that we should go in for buffaloes also because their fat content is higher, and dairies pay farmers for milk on the basis of their fat content?
You know, Vivian, if you look to buffalo milk, accepting high butter fat, which is 7.5% or above, you know, in the olden days, buffalo, there was no milk separation technology. So people were calling buffalo milk as very heavy milk. Today, with the milk cream separator, if you see the cow milk and compare with buffalo milk is rich in calcium, rich in protein, rich in, you know, fat, we can remove it, and low in cholesterol. So it has rich in minerals also. So if
So
you
what is
look
the reason?
at
In which case, why do people prefer cows and not
ignorance.
buffaloes?
No, the population, you know, cow has been, see, look, you know, you can't buy a buffalo. Cow is available at home, you breed them. You know, that's the way you have started in BAIF. If you want to start something, everything new, the investment is very high, risk is very high. So best thing is make use of the available animal, produce better progeny, then discard over a period of time and, you know, develop your own choice of animals. That's the way
All right,
one should go.
that point is well made, sir. Ranjit, as I was telling you, the problem of culling, there are, you hit the issue of religious sensitivities. Is there any way around it other than going in for buffaloes?
Yeah, even buffaloes, going in for buffaloes, again, there are cases like in Karnataka, for example. It's completely a cow bed, right? And personally, if you give me a glass of cow versus buffalo milk, I would still go for cow milk because I was born and brought up on cow milk. And taste is different, right? But obviously go up in UP, people are used in Andhra Pradesh, people are used to buffalo milk. So that way, not to, and from a productivity, from a stress management point of view and all of that, I think the ROI on a 0.65 bloodline HF cow can be better than the ROI on the buffalo. I'm not disputing any of what Narayan ji mentioned. Obviously, scientific needs better milk, more calcium, and more thicker, and all of that. So coming back to your core of the question, I think the government has to adopt more scientific practices, right? There's no other way, going beyond it, right? I think you can't just play on the sentiments. So there has to be a scientific, practice around it. To that extent, if you go really deep into some of the sentiments, you're not supposed to be eating anything that grows under the ground, right? So if you start playing on that sentiment, then
Ranjit,
you may not start getting products. Yeah.
Is there a way, for example, where we can produce more females and less males so that, we can do less culling?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the sex-sorted semen has been around for a while. The two practical, of course, and BAIF has been at the forefront of some of these innovations, and we have a common investor. Gates Foundation is an investor in us, and they're also an investor in BAIF. So we get to know a lot of details, and we try to collaborate. But I've heard two problems with the sex-sorted semen. One, obviously, it's still not as economical as the normal semen. Of course, the subsidies do kick in, but keeping the subsidy aside is still expensive. Number two, the success rate, if it has to match the normal semen success rate, the inseminator's expertise also comes in, right? So people say that success rate is low, but the counter argument I hear, it's not because of the efficacy and the potency of the sex-sorted semen. It's mainly because of the technicians not being sufficient expertise in sort of inseminating it. So other than that, I think the only way out is to go in for more scientific mechanisms and make sure that culling is not a taboo.
In terms of cost, how does a dose of sex-sorted semen compared to conventional semen compare?
I think it's 4 to 5 times higher is the last benchmark I've seen. It's at least 4 to 5 times. Yeah.
Right now, the royalty itself is something like about $10 to $11 per dose of semen. So that's a load,
Yeah.
Secondly, yes, Ranjit said, the count, sperm count is almost 10% of the normal one. I think they put only 2 million to 3 million viable sperms, whereas our traditional semen has almost 20 million. So that's the reason why it has to be very tricky, because it's all economics. People want to make more money. And otherwise, technology was sound. But I could feel, even if you have female, you need to get rid of it. In a real dairy business, what is a tradition? When you have large herd, when there is a drought, you are anticipating drought, people get rid of the stock long before. If the rainy season is bad, there's going to be a shortage of fodder sometime in October, November, December, January. The farmer would sell the animal by August, September, make money, keep it safe, and buy back. It has to have free transaction of cows, and then only things will be very normal. Otherwise, it's all artificial. When you go and sell the cow, you don't have buyer. When you have to buy a cow, you have to pay twice the money. That's what the real experience which is going to come now.
Okay. Now, Sir R.G. Chandramohan, who is the founder of Hanson Agro Products, one of India's largest private dairies, or perhaps the largest dairy, he was saying that India can be very competitive compared to, let's say, New Zealand or other countries in milk. He was saying that because we have tropical climate and we can grow fodder round the year, unlike European countries or New Zealand or Australia, which have got long winters. For example, he was saying that on 1 acre of land, we can grow about 30 to 35 tons of CO5, a bajra-napier hybrid grass developed by Tamil Nadu Agricultural University, compared to about 7 tons, which a farmer in New Zealand does per acre. And he was saying that if a farmer does that, and they can produce about 20,000 liters per acre per year, which is double the output of a New Zealand farmer. Do you agree with him? Can we do that?
I think that's not an issue in India. In India, in New Zealand, they want to make more money. Ultimately, they are not really worried. In fact, I have seen in New Zealand farmers, they are seasonal breeders. The animals come into heat at a particular season, almost 80% of the cows during the particular season. So they use liquid semen at that time because, they want to save on frozen semen. Okay. So they maintain on pastures. They have labor constant. They have, input constant. So they are ultimately looking for total money, how much a farmer can make, than a cow, competitiveness of a cow or a farmer. In India, we have to look for how much money you will make. And my consideration is as a small farmer, how I can give priority. If you give money, we would rather, like Bill Gates Foundation, they give money not to produce large herd. They want us to go and reach the small farmer. So my consideration, how a small farmer who has no other job, or a woman who has no other job, can get job out of it, and I will be very disappointed if Tatas or Birla start big dairies and, then wind up the whole business in the village. That's the whole mission is lost. The whole government or public money is spent for the sake of poor people. And unfortunately, our focus has been wrongly diverted. That's a very tragic part of the situation.
Dr. Hegde, there is no reason why small farmers cannot be competitive. After all, they can devote more of their time for the care of animals. It is happening in the case of smallholder farms as well. Our farms, the Chinese farms are smaller than Indian, but they are quite competitive. So there's no reason why I would imagine why a small farmer with the limited number of cattle cannot become competitive. Ranjith, on the question of fodder, how do we reduce the cost? Do you think that the CO5 bajra-napier hybrid, is that the only way, or are there other ways also? Because what Chandramohan was saying, that by growing that grass, you'll be able to produce, supply the cow's requirement of protein, daily requirement, at a fraction of the cost of feed supplements. Your take on that?
Yeah, so this the notion of very appropriate, ration balancing using the land that you own, right, has been around for a while. So the idea is you can't feed the animals only what you buy from a Godrej Agrovet or a Cargill or a Travel Nutrition, because those are concentrates, that those are feed, and then there are supplements. Fodder is what gives you energy. So you mentioned CO5, napiers. So if you actually do the right mix of dicots, monocots, napiers, CO5 in the 1 acre land that you have, obviously the animal can get, and of course silage, tree fodder, plant-based fodder. If you use the right combination, the animal will get the right nutrition. So it's not like in India we can't do it. It's a matter of, is there enough awareness among farmers? Does farmer know that using the half an acre that he has, 1 acre that he has, he can actually grow the right nutrition? So my sense is, I agree with Dr. Hegde that fodder is not a big problem. right? If you have the right mechanisms, advisories, and extension services, you can get the farmers to get that. So obviously, it's very important. I'm not dismissing it, because 60% of the input cost of a dairy farmer is cattle nutrition. Right? So if you can't control the cost, even if your top line goes up, your margins will not be great. So the idea is, yes, focus. My takeaway from that statement you made, that Chandra Mukundan, is you should have sufficient focus on cattle nutrition. It's not undoable. That's a crackable problem. But what is a more difficult problem is, how do I improve the throughput per farm, right? Going above the 101 of nutrition, how do I make sure that the farmers can graduate from 2 to 3 animals to 5 animals, 6 animals, 8 animals? How do I ensure that while all the good vets go and set up pet clinics in cities, you still can give them the right advisory so that they can maintain a farm of 10 to 20 animals, so they can shift orbits from a small holder to micro entrepreneur level, right? So that's sort of where I think we should focus on, not only improve yield, but improve throughput per farm, so they all shift to a micro entrepreneur orbits.
Is there an optimal herd size?
See, what we do, it's a function of the land holding, because we don't want the farmers to be dependent on external fodder, because that's again money, right? Assuming that he has access to some fodder, typical thumb rule that he uses, 1 acre of land can support, 5 to 6 lactating animals in terms of fodder plan, right? So what we do in our operations is first try to take the farmers from a 2 to 3 animals to an 8 to 10 animal level, because that itself is a big jump, because he has not seen from his great grandfather's time supporting a herd size of 8 to 10. They've always been 2 to 3, because it's for domestic consumption. The first step is to take them to 8 to 10. Once they know how to manage the 8 to 10 level, then take them to a 18 to 22 lactating animals. So I would take this in 2 steps. First, try to see in your operational areas, try to take them to an 8 to 10 animal level, and then take them from an 8 to 10 to take them to an 18 to 20 animal level. So that's sort of our ideal. Depending on the region, it will vary, landholding pattern will vary, water availability, fodder availability will vary, but that's roughly the thumb rule that we use.
Dr. Hegde, you wanted to intervene.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Vivian, when you go to a farmer and ask him to grow CO pie, you should have land, you should have water, the area should be congenial. If you are talking about Salem or Coimbatore, that's a different issue. When you go to a farmer, we must know what is the resource he has and help him, rather than telling him to do this and that. Then most of the farmers are left out. If your focus is to, that's exactly what I'm telling. If your focus is to produce more milk, that's a very good idea. But my focus is to make the farmer to be productive and economically viable. Now, for example, in this country, 55% of the fodder comes from crop residues. I have seen in many places farmers don't even understand how to make economic use of the crop residues. They don't even chop it. If you can chop the jawar kadbi or maize kadbi, you will increase the digestibility by about 10%. Not only that, you will also reduce the methane emission by 10%.
Ranjith, we have been seeing that the dairies have been procuring more milk than they can sell. And we have seen also the cooperative dairies, the private dairies raising the price. For example, just yesterday or day before yesterday, Mother Dairy has raised the price of milk by 2 rupees a litre for the second time this year. Now, beyond a point, there is going to be resistance. Not everybody can afford these high rates. So farmers want higher income, consumers want lower prices. The only way is to improve yields, and we have spoken about how we can do that. Now, how do we also reduce the inefficiency in the milk supply chain? Can you tell us about that? What are the kind of technologies you are deploying to ensure that the costs are reduced, that the drudgery of maintaining these cows?
We focus on both the pre-harvest and the post-harvest parts, ensure that there is end-to-end traceability. Rather than set up a supply-forward supply chain to meet the quantitative sufficiency problem, right, which Amul has done. Amul has done a really pioneering work in shifting milk from unorganized to the organized, and solving for the quantitative sufficiency of the milk. What we are now doing is not set up supply forward supply chains, but rather set up demand backward supply chains, right? So if there are pockets of people who are already used to clicking and buying from a Swiggy, Zomato, Licious, whatever, and we're willing to pay that extra rupee for an antibiotic-free milk, extra rupee for alpha-toxin-free milk. I'm using technical jargons here, but to a consumer, it has to be communicated very appropriately so that he knows that the milk that his kid at home drinks is really good and high nutrition and without any other things in it, right? So can we provide high quality nutrition, highly nutritious nutrient, and can that extra money that the consumer pays, can it actually flow back to the farmer? Milk is probably the only crop out there where 70 to 80% of what the consumer pays goes back to the farmer. I can't think of onions, potatoes, tomatoes happening that way. So to that extent, it's good. So anything that the consumer pays. So how can I make the consumers pay more so that the benefit can flow back to the farm? That's number one. Number two, as you said, I don't know how big New Zealand is, the size of Karnataka, but why are they controlling 60% of the global exports? Why can't India be able to manage the same? Why can't we export? Why can't we meet some of the export criteria? Not just from a procurement point of view, but also having the right processing technologies, that. So that, and India finally has not signed up to the RCEP, right? So we are sort of afraid that a Fonterra might come and dump their milk into India. But I think our quality should be so high. The other developed countries also should sit up and think, oh no, Indian milk can also come into our country, right? So I think one, focus on quality, focus on traceability, and focus on productivity and throughput per farm. And these are in that sequence so that we are able to then step up and change the entire unit economics of the supply chain.
So you are saying that we should sign the FTA with Australia and New Zealand?
With the right support. If you do it right now, I think we are going to be shooting ourselves on the foot, but we should set ourselves a target. I'd say in the next 36 months, guys, Australia should be worried that we are entering it, not the other way around. Right now, we shudder if we sign it. Why shouldn't an Australian farmer shudder if we sign it? Because we're still not there. Right now it's like pulling the rug under the feet, but we should move in that direction. And for that, we need to start working.
Dr. Hegde, where do you stand on this issue, whether we should sign a regional comprehensive economic partnership agreement with Australia and New Zealand? Our dairy cooperatives have been completely opposed to it, saying that the livelihood of thousands of lakhs of farmers will be at stake.
I agree. Only thing, we have to be more competitive, demonstrate, because there is a lot of scope even today. Long ago, about 25 years ago, I went to Israel.
So since we are running out of time, you are saying that we should be headed in that direction. So are you making a case for gradualism? Maybe not 3 years, but within 5 years we should join this agreement?
It can be very disastrous for our farmers, because once it opens, then we become very uncompetitive. So probably we must really work at it and see how we become competitive. One idea I was thinking, at the decentralized level, can't we have roadside milk parlors where, every booth can process about 50,000 liters. Today, all the ice cream comes from the factory going and back. We have been talking about the same disadvantage for the last 30 years. Nothing is happening. We're only talking about increasing milk production, but increasing the competitiveness, improving the processing has not taken place. I think we need to attend to that. That's what it is.
Okay. So if I sum up from what you have said, what you are saying that we should improve the quality of our breeds, going for more crossbreds. We must reduce the cost of inputs like fodder and other things. We must improve dairy management, and over a period of time, maybe in 3 to 5 years' time, we should think of joining a free trade agreement with New Zealand and Australia. And once we have that target in mind, we will work backwards and try to make our industry much more competitive. So on that note, Ranjith Mukundan and Dr. Narayan Hedge, thank you very much.
Thank you, Vivian. Thank you for this. Thank you.
Subscribe to the Federal's YouTube page for more interesting updates.